I'm Elaine Reyes at the United Nations headquarters in New York, and this is UN Insider.
Coming up.
There is a tipping point approaching, beyond which recovery may become impossible.
An urgent call for action. Leaders from around the globe gather in France for the UN Ocean Conference.
It is important for us to look at the root causes of conflict, and we believe that underdevelopment and poverty play a very important role in that.
Guyana's ambassador outlines the country's priorities as it assumes this month's Security Council presidency. Fostering cooperation and greater understanding. The UN marks the first International Day for Dialogue among Civilizations. Next.
Oceans produce at least 50% of oxygen on Earth. But oceans and their ecosystems face significant challenges, from climate change and dwindling coral reefs to overfishing and plastic pollution. This week, delegates gathered in Nice, France, to work towards sustainable solutions during the World Ocean Conference.
Without a healthy ocean, there can be no healthy planet.
Secretary General Antonio Guterres opened the UN Ocean Conference in Nice with an ambitious agenda. With more than 50 heads of state in attendance, Guterres called for action, outlining 4 main priorities: transforming ocean harvesting, finalizing a global plastic pollution treaty, bold country plans to fight climate change, and enforcing a high seas treaty to protect marine biodiversity. Ocean health has declined significantly in the face of overfishing, pollution, warming temperatures, seabed mining, and other challenges. This week's talks are expected to result in the Nice Action Ocean Plan, a conservation blueprint that will align with the Kunming-Montreal Biodiversity Agreement. France and Costa Rica are co-hosting the Ocean Conference. Presidents Emmanuel Macron and Rodrigo Chavez Robles stress the urgent need to boost ocean conservation.
Ce combat est vital pour nous tous. Et je le dis.
This fight is vital for all of us, and I say it here with force. The deep oceans are not for sale, any more than Greenland is for sale, any more than Antarctica or the high seas are for sale. The fishing rights of developing countries are not to be given away, nor is the safety of coastal populations to be sacrificed. We are talking about a common good. We are talking about a cause that commits us all.
Bien commun. Nous parlons d'une œuvre qui nous engage tous.
This summit must be remembered as the moment when the world understood that caring for and protecting the ocean is not an option. It's a moral obligation, economic necessity, and essential to the very survival of our species on this earth.
From the Security Council to the briefing room and beyond, Shudija is monitoring the latest developments inside the UN. Deja.
Yes, Elaine. It's been a relatively quiet week here at the United Nations headquarters. But as expected, the 10th Emergency Special Session of the General Assembly on the question of Palestine resumed, following the U.S. veto at the Security Council. The General Assembly took up a draft resolution introduced by Spain. No surprise, it passed by an overwhelming majority, with only a handful of countries, including Israel and the United States, voting against it. The resolution is wide-ranging, covering a ceasefire, the release of hostages, humanitarian aid, respect for the International Court of Justice ruling, the safety of UN missions, you name it. And here's Palestinian Ambassador Riyad Mansour explaining why this non-binding resolution still matters.
The actions you take today will determine if Palestinian children ever get a chance at life. We count not only on your vote, but also on your deeds to make sure our actions matches our words.
And here is how Israel responded.
Now ask yourselves, why does this sentence not appear in this resolution you are about to vote on? What was so difficult? I asked my colleague from Spain. You negotiated this resolution. Where is the condemnation of Hamas? Why it was so hard? One line.
One of the main justifications Israel gives for its operation in Gaza is the continued existence of Hamas. But that raises a question one I imagine many of us are asking. Who exactly is Hamas? Can you clarify a little bit, what is Hamas now? Like, who can you define as Hamas? The one who's with the guns, who attack Israeli civilians? Can you give us a little bit of elaboration?
So Hamas today, it's not the same Hamas that was there in Gaza on October 7th. It's reduced, it's weak, but it's still there. We saw what they did last night to the humanitarian workers. They are still trying to take advantage of the humanitarian aid. We revealed some information that they're actually putting pressure on the NGOs inside Gaza. So they are still there, very weak, but
how can you identify them? How can you identify
if you see somebody carrying a gun and shooting civilians or aid workers, he's a terrorist. And that's what we are doing. We are hunting them down.
This week also brought a stream of alarming reports. People seeking humanitarian aid in Gaza were being shot near distribution points of the Gaza Humanitarian Fund. The UN responded bluntly, "We warned you."
Do you think if the UN decided to participate in the Gaza Humanitarian Fund, it would make a difference than what we're seeing these days?
The reason we're not participating in this effort is because it does not meet the minimum standards that we hold for humanitarian aid delivery. If we cannot deliver aid under our standards for neutrality, for impartiality, for independence, and for need-based aid, we will not be able to do this.
Do you think this could be one of the reasons that there are so many incidents happened around that delivery points?
We have already warned, and we did this before this operation started, of the risks involved in having a small number of aid areas that would entail people going through conflict zones in order to get to aid. And you've seen what the results have been.
Looking ahead to next week, there's an international conference on the two-state solution, but the US appears to be discouraging member states from taking part.
Today, Reuters reported that US warns against attending UN conference on Israel-Palestinian two-state solution and said those member states who participate could face, quote, diplomatic consequences from the United States. What's the response from the UN on this decision from Trump administration?
I believe that all the member states of the system will make their own decisions accordingly to what their own interests are. But we expect that there will be a widespread attendance at this meeting. And the Secretary General, in his stakeout appearance last week, explained exactly the importance of keeping the two-state solution alive.
And that's all from here for this week. Back to you, Elaine.
Shudeja, thanks. The UN held events this week marking the first International Day for Dialogue Among Civilizations. The day is an opportunity to raise awareness about the value of diversity among different cultures and promote a more harmonious world. Karina Mitchell has more on the inaugural celebration.
Backed by over 80 countries, the United Nations is observing its inaugural International Day for Dialogue Among Civilizations around the world. The landmark event is meant to serve as a clarion call, promoting peaceful coexistence among all nations through global discourse, greater cooperation, and mutual respect.
We do hope that this spirit of dialogue will be carried forward, and as people say, will yield some concrete results in harmonizing relations among countries.
The day is being marked in various countries, including right here in New York at the global headquarters of the United Nations. And it comes at a time of increased polarization, crises, and uncertainty around the world.
The premier event in New York included a symposium with dignitaries and academics. They discussed the need to fortify global solidarity and cooperation through shared values and open communication.
What happens if we do not engage in dialogue?
Well, there is no alternative. I think more and more we need a dialogue. We need to respect each other. It's over the hegemony of one country, or one culture, one civilization. It's over. Today, everybody says we are a multipolar world, different actors, different culture, different religions, different civilizations. So it's a reality.
Attendees said musical performances, drama, and multimedia artwork on display also help underscore the importance of using cultural awareness as a bridge to dialogue.
Civilization and culture has always been part of Chinese diplomacy.
Any dialogue starts with the understanding of each other. And of course, without knowing this history and culture, you wouldn't be able, to find this common ground.
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres characterized the date as a time to listen, to speak, to connect, and to answer hate with humanity, with the ultimate hope that the International Day for Dialogue, first proposed by China, serves as a starting point for creating a more equitable, just, and tolerant world for everyone. Karina Mitchell, CGTN, New York.
Let's take a look at some of the other issues on the UN's agenda.
We need to understand that the crisis we have been describing is only getting worse. Last year we used to talk about hundreds of thousands of displaced people. We now have 1.3 million who are officially labeled as internally displaced within Haiti.
That's ECOSOC President Bob Ray. The UN is looking for more solutions for Haiti. ECOSOC hosted a conference this week seeking ways to address security issues and spark development in the Caribbean nation. Nearly 138 million kids around the world are engaged in child labor, according to UNICEF and the International Labor Organization. An estimated 54 million children are performing hazardous work. Agriculture is the largest sector using child labor. Global growth is expected to drop to its slowest pace since 2008. Developing economies may be hit hardest. The World Bank does not expect a global recession, but warns the current decade could see the slowest growth of any decade since the 1960s.
Coming up.
The UN is us, and it's up to us to make the UN what we want it to be.
UN Insider.
Guyana holds the presidency of the UN Security Council for June. I sat down with Permanent Representative Carolyn Rodriguez-Burkett to talk about Guyana's biggest priorities for the month. Ambassador, a lot in the world has changed since you last held the presidency in February of 2024. What are your priorities as you lead the council this June?
Well, yes, a lot has changed since last time, but a lot has also remained the same. And the priorities for Guyana have not changed. But what we would like to focus this June in terms of Guyana's presidency and what we would like to zero in on is the link between poverty, underdevelopment, and conflict. And why? Because we are seeing a regression on the development side, and we are seeing an increase in conflicts. I think it is important for us to look at the root causes of conflict, and we believe that underdevelopment and poverty play a very important role in that. So for our signature event on the 19th of June, we will have an open debate on this, which will allow all member states of the United Nations, not just the Security Council, an opportunity to share their views.
Ambassador, can you tell us a little bit more about your upcoming debate on children in armed conflict?
It's an annual debate, but this year I think the debate would bring added significance given what is happening in the world with children in armed conflict. The trend is not good at all. We're seeing an upsurge in children being harmed in conflicts indiscriminately. When we look at Haiti, when we look at Sudan, when we look at Gaza, Yemen, so many other places, it's not a good story. And I think that this debate would allow us to not only speak about what is happening, but bring attention to those who are the parties in armed conflict to roll back this ugly trend of harming our children.
You've been very outspoken on the conflict in Gaza, and you said recently that the Council must take principled and urgent action. Can you explain that for us?
Well, I think it's extremely important for us to take action now. It's been important from the day this war started, but we have gone far past all boundaries, I would say. And to have a population facing starvation, facing famine, massive displacement. Some families have been displaced 10 times and more, and the situation is not improving. I think we have to focus on returning to a ceasefire. But more than that, I think it's important to focus on the long-term solution, which is the two-state solution. I don't think that anyone would expect that the security of Israel will be guaranteed without a solution in Palestine. And I think the two-state solution will certainly play an important role in guaranteeing the security both of Palestine and Israel. And I think both peoples deserve to live side by side in peace. So focusing on an immediate and permanent ceasefire, it's important, but also getting humanitarian aid into Gaza.
Gender equality, one of the Sustainable Development Goals. We're seeing a lot of women in leadership at the United Nations, the incoming UN General Assembly President. There's a big push for the next Secretary General to be a woman from your region. As a woman in leadership and with the experience you have, do you feel that it is getting better or the conditions somewhat easier to navigate?
I would say it's a mixed bag, and we're still not there yet globally. But if you disaggregate, you might see some very interesting and encouraging developments in individual countries. In my country, for example, we have many women in leadership. Our judiciary is led by women. We have in our parliament over 30% are women. At the level of regional and local leadership, we have many, many women. We have had in our history one woman president in our country. But when you take the UN, if we're just going to look at permanent representatives, we're just over 40 out of the 193. So we still have a far way to go there. But the Secretary General has been doing a fantastic job in ensuring gender equality in the staffing of the Secretariat. And in terms of senior management, they have reached parity. So that's very encouraging. In terms of the Secretary General, this year we're going to be going into our 80th session of the United Nations, so 80 years. And we have never had a woman Secretary General. Certainly, I think the best person for the job can be either a man or a woman. But because we haven't had a woman Secretary General in all these 80 years, people would be looking out to see that we have one this time.
You mentioned 80 years of the United Nations. Do you have any reflections on the body as it moves into the future and the importance of it in the world that we live in today?
I think that if the UN did not exist, we will have to invent it. And it is very difficult to do an evaluation of an institution's absence and what the world would be like. But for us, certainly, we believe that the UN has lived up to the vision that was set in 1945. It was to prevent the scourge of another war, like we've seen another world war. We have seen a number of conflicts these days, but by and large, I think the UN has lived up to its vision. One of the challenges we face is the UN is judged through the eyes of the Security Council. what it's able to do and what it's not able to do. But the UN is much more than the Security Council. The work that is being done by the UN on the ground with countries on development, for example, the work that the UN has been doing in the area of humanitarian assistance, without the UN being able to deliver in those emergencies, I shudder to think what would happen to our populations who are in need of emergency assistance. That said, 80 years is a time for reflection and a time for recalibration. Many believe that the flouting of international law that we've been seeing in these recent years with impunity and without any accountability must change. And this is why I think we have to look at the UN, make it more fit for purpose, go back to what it was established for, recalibrate and move on. But the UN is us, and it's up to us to make the UN what we want it to be.
Ambassador Carolyn Rodriguez-Burkett, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
UN Insider.
Whether it's about your education, the home you live in, or the items you buy, your money has a story to tell. Because every business story is a human story. Global Business.
This week, the UN hosted an event focused on the rights of people living with disabilities. More than 1.3 billion people around the world live with a significant disability. A foundation in Brazil is encouraging differently abled people to express themselves through the beauty of ballet.
These two remarkable dancers have transcended their physical limits to complete their classical ballet training at the Fernanda Bianchini Association of Ballet for the Blind.
The students are very fragile when they arrive. They're very insecure. Then, throughout the year, you see these children, these teenagers, these adults, these elderly people who have just lost their vision, growing stronger.
Bianchini founded this nonprofit in São Paulo 29 years ago.
Every day, these girls and boys teach me to close my eyes and open my heart. Eyes can be so prejudiced. Through art, I learn to see a more beautiful and profound world that is more inclusive.
Mayumi was always fascinated by the ballet. But life took her on a different path. At 24, she was diagnosed with myasthenia gravis, an autoimmune disease that causes muscle weakness.
I went through periods when I couldn't move or even eat. I did nothing and was bedridden. I developed cataracts caused by the medication, which affected my eyes and ultimately my vision. Surgery only recovered 10% of my eyesight.
Her journey back to movement was anything but easy.
When I first came here, I had to learn a lot, including how to walk. Being in a wheelchair left me with reduced bodily strength, not just my legs, but my torso and my entire body.
Jessica has always strived to live without limitations, despite her visual impairment.
I've always hidden my disability. Because I'm a person with low vision, people don't realize I have a disability. People think I shouldn't sit in a priority seat on the bus, or if I'm standing on a priority line, people assume I'm a lazy youngster.
Here, what cannot be seen is taught through touch. Every plié, every pas de deux, every movement of the classical ballet is built into a unique language that dancers learn through the repetitive gestures of their teachers' bodies.
It gets easier because once we learn a step, we know it by name. When the teacher says tendu, we already know what a tendu is, and that we need to extend one leg. Since I studied ballet when I could see, I think the touch method is much easier to learn because we feel the required muscular movements.
Even though I've always been around people with disabilities, no one used touch as much as this method does. So I was slow to understand this method. But once I caught on, I began to understand it.
The Fernanda Bianchini Association offers free classes to more than 450 students, most of them visually impaired. It welcomes those with other disabilities, but even dancers without physical limitations can participate.
Porque a gente acredita que a arte ela transforma. We believe that art turns tears into smiles. We hear so many stories of people who were given the end of their story. The doctor told me I'd never do this. The doctor told me I'd never do that. Here, we learn to change the narrative and continue these stories with potential, joy, and dreams that come true. Sonhos realizados mesmo.
I'm Elaine Reyes at UN headquarters in New York. Thanks for being a UN Insider. I'm Elaine Reyes at the United Nations headquarters in New York, and this is a special edition of UN Insider.
UN Insider serves as an important window for the global audience to better understand multilateral diplomacy.
It's very important for the media to cover the United Nations, to seek to understand and tell the story in ways that the average person in the street can understand.
I think it's very important that the media should contribute to conveying important messages about the reality of today's challenges.
UN Insider has come to the UN, and we at the UN are so grateful to have it here. It is the only dedicated TV program to what is happening in the UN, and it is reaching so many people with, as it says in its title, inside the UN stories.
Media plays an important role in providing objective information across the world.
We think that media has a strong power of uplifting, what we are trying to convey as messages as developing countries.
We need the mobilization of all peoples, of whole government and whole of society, and media can help us to be informed so that we also can make our part.
I think the media is fundamental to enable citizens across the world, first of all, to understand what is the rationale of having the United Nations. It's not that there is one place on planet Earth that will tell the rest of the world what to do. It is a much more complex story.